Today I'm going to show you how I do my cable management. Hello fellow CNC nuts and welcome. Today we're having a look at cable management. Since I upgraded my machine last week, I no longer have full range of motion in the Y direction. I need to increase the length of my cable management so that the machine can travel the full length of the Y axis. So I'm going to show you how my cable management is made, and cable management is very important. You need to ensure that those cables are kept up out of the way. Because the machine is continually in motion, you need to make sure that those cables don't come in contact with your linear rail system or the router itself. They need to be kept safe. This is the system I've used for the last 8 years on this machine, and it works really well. I've never had a failure of it. It's really simple to install, and you can make it from parts you have laying about the workshop. Let's have a look at how it's made. So here are all the parts required to make a simple cable management setup. I've got 2 sticks. Now these are of different lengths, and you'll see why that is shortly. I have 3 hinges. These measure about 40 millimeters by 90. The sticks are 40 millimeters wide by 18 millimeters thick. I've got a selection of 3/4 inch or 18 millimeter screws. I have a nut, bolt and washer combination here. Some cable ties to attach the cables to the sticks once it's finished, and some miscellaneous tools to assemble this. Now I've started by rounding over the edges of my pieces of wood here so that they're nice and round for the cable ties to go around. I did consider cutting slotted holes in there to try and embed the cables in, but I decided that was basically just a waste of my time. I'm going to start with putting the first hinge on, and this hinge I've modified. I've put an 8mm hole here in it, and that's to attach it to the aluminium extrusion. You'll see why I want to do that later. But I'm going to turn this one here upside down. I'm butting it hard up against the wood here, and I'm going to put my screws in. You want to make sure when you put these hinges in that everything ends up nice and square to the timber. I can now connect that to the second piece of wood. This time I'm leaving the hinge facing up this way here, although it is on here upside down. I'm going to put this hinge this way up. So having put one screw in each of them, I want to get everything lined up so these here are running nice and parallel, like so. Make sure my hinges are nice and parallel with the wood. There it is, screwed together, and as you can see it folds up so that these sides are nice and parallel. So moving along a bit further, I'm going to put this last hinge on, and it's going to go on the very end here. Again, with the actual hinge pieces facing up. Now I know what you guys are thinking. This is a really simple project, but it's actually not quite as simple as it looks. Embarrassingly enough, it's taken me 3 attempts to get the right hinge at the right end of these pieces of wood and to get it orientated the right way around. Very embarrassing indeed. Not to mention, when you do make this here, you have to make sure these here end up the right length, otherwise it won't work very well. Nonetheless, I have got it the right way around now, so we can now attach it to the machine. So the length of these sticks here are important with respect to one another. What's the correct length for these sticks? Well, when this is screwed to here, and this here comes up close to it, these two sticks should be vertical when they're standing next to one another. So in my case, these sticks are the correct length because these are vertical. Now if this here was a little bit higher than it should be, you're going to find it will lean this way. If this stick is too long, you'll find it'll lean this way on you when they're next to one another. When they're correct, they'll be like this, nice and vertical. To mount this end here, I'm just going to use a nut and bolt arrangement. I've got my bolt here. I'm just going to put that through the hole in the hinge that I drilled previously. Put on a washer, a spring washer, and a nut. I can now slot this into the extrusion. I can now come to this side here and screw this hinge onto my x-axis. You need to make sure that when they're screwed in place, when they come together, that they are in alignment in this direction here, which mine are. And that's that in place. Now we can look at putting our cables onto it. The cables simply come up and over the outside of our sticks. We hold them in place using standard cable ties. Just put them on loosely to start with, then you can rearrange the cables onto the sticks in the order you want them to be in. Now you need to make sure that you've left enough here at the top so that the cables go up and over the top, so they should be above this here when it's fully closed up. And there we have it, our completed cable management. Now when you do it, you need to make sure as well that the length of this here, when the carriage is fully across, is long enough such that this does not straighten. If it straightens, it's going to end up locking and it's not going to be able to pull back in the other direction. And the other reason you want that loop there is the longer you make this here, the less stress it will put on this here when these straighten as well. This actually does not put a lot of stress on here, and here, these points here are the only places where the cable's stressed. The rest of the time it's all kept nice and straight throughout the system. So there you have it, a really simple setup. I demonstrated this using the X rail because it was easier to video, but the Y setup is pretty much identical. The only changes are how I attached it at each end. And you can see from these photos how I went about that. It's really up to you and your imagination on how you can connect each end. Now I'm not going to pretend that this is the most stylish cable management system that I've ever seen, because it simply isn't. But it does fulfill the requirements. It keeps the cables tidy, keeps them safe, allows the machine to move properly. What more do I really need? Now of course you can also buy a plastic chain that the cable fits into. It goes by several names. Energy chain would be one of them, and drag chain would be another. You can purchase these off eBay for about $10 a meter, and when I finally finish all my upgrades, I'll seriously look at buying some, just to make the machine look that bit nicer. But in the meantime, this will work perfectly fine. It's worked for the last 8 years. I see no reason why it won't work for another 8. Well, that about wraps it up for this week. If you haven't got your cables already sorted, now would be a great time to go out to the workshop and set up some sort of cable management for your machine. All that remains for me to do is to thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Cheers! Just about forgot. Now they've got full range of motion on my machine because the cable management on the Y is now complete. I'm running the gantry backwards and forwards. This is the final step in shaping those V-rails. The constant movement of the gantry along with the hardened steel bearings will gently shape those Y-axis rails. It's going to be running a little while.